Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. Really excited for this video. We're continuing where we left off here now with our Week 11 predictions and pick 'em. Of course, we've had a really successful point up to this season. Austin's been getting a lot of games right. I've been getting significantly less games right, but nothing new there. As you can see, I'm 7 games back. I'm kind of hitting that panic zone right now. You might as well call me the Minnesota Timberwolves with how the start of the season's gone for me here. Kind of a disaster right now. Austin, how comfortable do you feel with that 7-game lead?
No, I don't. I think this might be a makeup week here. We'll have to see how this goes, but I don't have any amount of confidence because I feel like this season definitely could have gone better to this point.
If I had 2 words to use to describe why I'm down by 7 points right now in Pick'em, I'd probably use the word Raider and the word Jaguar. I've been infamous for picking those 2 teams, so we'll see how this week goes for Pick'em. Let's get into it here now, Austin, with our bye week teams. The Dolphins, there's those Jaguars, the Buccaneers, and Seahawks are all on bye. Really good for the Bucs and Seahawks to be on bye traveling back from Germany. We've seen some other teams traveling back and forth from London not be as lucky this year. So the German teams, they get lucky here, get some bye weeks, Miami and Jacksonville as well. So, hey, Florida fans, you're going to be watching a lot of Miami Heat basketball this week, especially on Sunday. So let's go ahead now and jump forward into our first slate of games here. Thursday Night Football. We've got the Tennessee Titans and the Green Bay Packers. Everyone was sounding the alarm on Green Bay besides you and me. We said, hey, they're going to go beat Dallas. They did. They took care of business. It was a really important win for them. However, Minnesota won as well. So they haven't really gained ground in that division, but they're still a team that you expect could make a run at some point with Aaron Rodgers on that roster. And for that reason, you and I both go with Green Bay. Lambeau's a really tough place to play. How important is home field advantage here, and how important is that quarterback position for this game?
Yeah, I think the quarterback position is single-handedly the biggest factor for me in this one. Tennessee has been able to get the job done, though. Ever since the start of their season, they've been in a very, very nice flow in rhythm with their offense. Their defense is playing good football. And I think when you look at this matchup, this is a marquee one. This is one that Green Bay, if they're able to rattle off another one, then you can start to build some confidence. And you started to see some of that confidence building with Green Bay in that Dallas game. When they were down 14, the confidence didn't waver with Aaron Rodgers, and they looked really great down the stretch. Offensively, defensively, they were making the key plays that they needed to in order to win that football game against a talented Dallas Cowboys offense that, has been, looking pretty good for the most part. Tony Pollard had a nice game. Green Bay's got to shore up the run defense a little bit, but defensively, they made the key marquee plays when they needed to. I think Green Bay is going to be the victor in this one.
Right. We know the focal point this week in practice is all going to be about that run game. How do they stop Derrick Henry, at least slow him down? Very difficult to stop him as a runner. But again, the arm talent might just be there. And Christian Watson, shout out to him. He had a huge day in week 10, and he's hoping to build off of that into week 11. Going into the Sunday slate of games now, there's a good collection of games here that'll go a long way in really deciding who wins or loses their division. And a team right now that's kind of in a race here, the Atlanta Falcons in that NFC South. The NFC South right now just hasn't been good, quite frankly. The Buccaneers had a really big win in Germany, and that was a win they needed. And the Falcons need to come get one here against the Bears. However, you and I split decision here. I'm going with the Bears. Justin Fields has been playing better. And I'm starting to like the confidence that he's starting to exude in some of his post-game pressers and just the way that he's playing. Obviously not the traditional style of quarterback play, but we've seen how difficult it is for teams to adjust to that. A quarterback as mobile as he is, something that when he was coming out of Ohio State, we thought, hey, he still might have a shot at being a legit pocket passer. Hasn't really played out that way. Maybe with Chase Claypool, give him a little bit more time in the offense. Maybe he starts to emerge as a real weapon for him. But Fields has done a lot of nice things in recent weeks. Obviously, for those who own him in fantasy, he's a must-start fantasy player right now. Doesn't necessarily mean he's a great quarterback, but he's coming along, which is why I'm picking Chicago. Austin, Atlanta, they've got a question mark there at QB as well. Arthur Smith said he didn't even consider Desmond Ridder. Is it time to give the ball to Desmond Ridder, or in the race of this playoff hunt, should they keep riding with Mariota?
Yeah, I think that's a great question you want to ask yourself when you look at the 2 quarterbacks. We know what Desmond Ridder was at Cincinnati, and I think he's going to, give you a little bit more potentially than Mariota. But at this point in the season, I don't know. Like, if you're right in the playoff hunt, you might as well probably stick with Mariota. I'm a big advocate for making the quarterback change, but at the end of the day, they are right in the thick of it. So I think they might have to continue to ride with it. Atlanta has been playing pretty well for the most part. That Carolina game Thursday night, on the road in the rain. I think it just was a culmination of a lot of things that didn't work towards Atlanta's favor, and they obviously lost that game. A little bit extra rest going into this week. Atlanta being at home, I have a little more confidence. Arthur Smith has done a really nice job with this team, a team that is, kind of talent deficient, I think is probably the best way of describing it. However, he gets the most out of his teams, generally speaking. And I like the fact that they are at home against the Bears here. They're going to throw a lot of different looks at Justin Fields and potentially put a spy on him, because teams have been struggling to stop him the last couple of weeks running the football. And I think Atlanta is going to have to come up with a really good formula.
If the Falcons make the playoffs, you have to kind of shoe in that award to Arthur Smith for Coach of the Year this year, just kind of with what he's overcoming in terms of talent on that team. Our next game here now is a matchup between the Carolina Panthers, who just beat Atlanta, like you referenced, and the Baltimore Ravens. And this is a really easy pick for both of us, I feel like, to go with Baltimore. They're just, quite frankly, the better team. And if you went positionally down the list, you probably get to pretty much every single position, maybe besides wide receiver now with Rashad Bateman injured. And you say, hey, the Ravens have the advantage here, 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 and here. What does Carolina have to do to maybe make up for some of those talent differentials, Austin? And are you buying in Deontay Foreman stock right now?
Yeah, I think that you kind of nailed it with the factor going to be running the football. That's been the key formula here with Foreman and also Chuba Hubbard. I think, honestly, they're going to have like 150 to 175 combined yards on the ground in order to be close in this game. Baltimore just has too many playmakers, too many guys that, quite frankly, just overmatch them talent-wise. It's tough to go into Baltimore and win a game like that, especially if you're the Carolina Panthers, who have struggled to throw the football all year long. Doesn't matter who's been at quarterback. There's been a major struggle with this team. And I think that Carolina getting that win against Atlanta was a little fluky, but they were at home against a divisional opponent. It makes sense, but I just don't love what that team has on the roster right now. I like what Baltimore has. They're a well-coached team and a team that's very much in the playoff race. Therefore, I think they should be able to handle everything at home.
I'm excited to see how much Roquan Smith we see this week. Obviously, he's still adjusting to being in Baltimore now, but I think he could really be a big difference maker for this Ravens team down the stretch, and he'll have to have a good game here against Carolina to slow down those running backs like you talked about. Our next game now, we go into Cleveland, who is going into Buffalo themselves to take on the Bills, who were probably part of the game of the week and maybe the game of the year this year between the Bills and Vikings. We'll talk more about that later as well when we get to Minnesota. But that was a great game, and Josh Allen looked really good for the most part. Obviously had 3 costly turnovers in that game, which I just can't see him doing that again. Now he does have 10 picks on the year, which leads the NFL at this current juncture, which is not something I think a lot of people would have expected when they picked him to be MVP. But here the Bills over the Browns, it just feels safe, especially since Deshaun Watson still will not be back for this game based on his suspension length. Austin, is there a chance the Browns win? How much is this going to rely on Nick Chubb? Is this kind of like the last game we just talked about?
Yeah, I think Buffalo's defense is so sound that I have a hard time believing that Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt can really carry this team to a victory. Once again, it's actually going to rely on the arm of Jacoby Brissett and seeing if he can, really start to stretch out that defense of Buffalo, but they're just so good across the board. You look at their defensive line, their secondary. I mean, Buffalo was playing with a very banged up secondary against Minnesota, and they were right there to potentially win that football game. A couple things went wrong for them. One of those uncharacteristic things that we've seen out of McDermott's teams over the last couple of years. These were mistakes that we had not seen prior, and all of that kind of piled together. Still almost won the football game. Still, a top 5 team for sure in the NFL, maybe a top 3 team. And I believe that's kind of where they sit, is that top 3 realm. Other people have varying opinions, but Buffalo is so good. I expect them to get the job done at home against a lesser Cleveland Brown team. Once again, it relies on Jacoby Brissett making some big plays, uncharacteristic plays for him in order for them to really have a true chance.
I'm going to go as far as saying I think this is a must-win game for Buffalo. I agree with you completely in terms of the talent, how good this team actually is. But if they lose and New England were to win this week, Buffalo would find themselves in last place in the division, not really the place you want to be heading into week 12. So it's important that in week 11, they take care of business here at home against Cleveland. Our next game now is a matchup between the Washington Commanders and the Houston Texans. I'm sure this is the game that everyone's looking forward to this week. Just kidding. Probably not. The Commanders, Texans, probably not at the top of the list for a lot of people. Austin, you're going Commanders here on the road. I'm going Texans at home. Home field advantage was really big for me here. One of my only real reasons for picking the Texans. This is one of the gross games of the week for me. Don't really love either side, either option here. But Dameon Pierce kind of limited this past week. I think he's going to have a big game this next week. And if he does that at home, the Texans should win in my eyes. How about the Commanders? What does it take for them to get the job done?
I think Taylor Heineke has been, creative enough as a playmaker to make them win this football game. When they played against Minnesota just 2 weeks ago, I mean, they were competitive in that game for the most part. They were right in there. Taylor Heineke has added a different element to this offense with his ability to navigate the pocket and create some off-schedule plays for big yardage. And I think, once again, that's what was the deciding factor for me here. The idea of the Texans being at home, two teams that, are definitely struggling so far this year, but I like the defensive front for Washington. I think they should be able to bottle up the run a little bit. Dameon Pierce is a terrific running back, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on Davis Mills to, hit outside the numbers. I mean, I think when you look at this team here, they're going to have to get the ball out quickly. The Commanders' front seven is terrific. And I think, once again, Davis Mills is going to have some big throws here. Maybe Brandon Cooks will be back to change up what that look is for, the Texans. But at the end of the day, I don't love the talent deficient Texans on offense.
Right. There's been a lot of clarity gained this year. I think Dameon Pierce, running back of the future, Davis Mills, maybe not the quarterback of the future. I think that's what the Texans front office probably learned this season up to this point, at least. Who knows how the end of the season will play out, though. Going into our next game now, we have a matchup here between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Indianapolis Colts. And Jeff Saturday, will he go 2-0? You and I don't quite see it. However, really impressive for someone who was 3-7 as a high school coach, no collegiate coaching experience, no NFL coaching experience, to get a win in his first ever game against the Raiders. So hats off to you, Jeff Saturday. But I don't see you getting two in a row here. The Eagles are just better. They've been clicking on all cylinders. And people will probably diminish the Colts too after the Eagles beat them and say, oh, they still haven't played anybody. They played who the NFL scheduled them, and they've taken care of business every single game. I don't understand how this is any type of an argument that, oh, they haven't played anybody. They've played 8 NFL teams and beat all of them. That's not easy to do. They've done it. Austin, how comfortably do you think the Eagles win this one?
I think they're going to win this comfortably. I think I don't have a lot of belief in Matt Ryan. And nice thing for Jeff Saturday, he got scheduled against the Raiders, who even he quoted saying a couple days ago that the Raiders are terrible on Twitter. So good thing he got that matchup, because he got to go up against Josh McDaniels, who has struggled to command a locker room. We've seen it in Denver, and now it has transferred over to the Raiders, a very talented team on paper going into the season. Once again, did not translate. I think it was a failure on the front office's part there, failing to put together any semblance of an offensive line. Derek Carr just playing, below what his level is. It doesn't make any sense with one of the top receivers in football. But back to the Colts here, they're going to be overmatched. Matt Ryan is going to probably have a couple turnover-worthy passes in this one. I see the Eagles, handling them pretty soundly on the road. Indianapolis doesn't scare me offensively. Jonathan Taylor finally came back and looked good, but once again, Matt Ryan, he just doesn't do it for me.
Definitely. Moving into our next game now, we look at a matchup here between my New York Jets, shout out to my Jets, going up against the New England Patriots in a place that has historically been really tough to play, specifically for the New York Jets. They struggle in New England more than pretty much every other team. But guys, a little bit of homerism showing here. I'm taking my Jets, and we're going to win on the road. We're going to show New England what's up in the AFC East. And this is a must-win game again for the New York Jets. I talked about a big win for the Bills and how important it would be for them to beat the Browns this week. If the Jets lose here, the chance at winning the division, I believe, goes out the door. You're going to have a really tough schedule to end the year. You have to play Buffalo again. You're going to have to play Miami healthy. Of course, the Jets kind of got lucky earlier, not having to face Tua Tagovailoa. This is a really important game. The Jets already lost a game to New England this year. They need to win this one, and I think they're going to do it. And I think Sauce Gardner is going to make a really big play this week. You're going to see him on the thumbnail of our video. I really believe he's going to show out and make a really impactful play, whether it's a pass deflection on a key 3rd or 4th down, or actually going and getting the football. I think he's due for one this week. We'll see if it plays out that way. Austin, you're going with New England, though. Probably the safe pick at home. Why do you like them so much here?
I just look at historically with the New England Patriots and facing the New York Jets. I mean, like you said, the Jets have struggled, and granted, this is a different regime. This is a different team. A lot of that, prior history stuff doesn't matter because Tom Brady's not involved. The Jets, as bad as they've been over the last couple of seasons, This is not that same team. Now, I just look at it. Bill Belichick is good at home. Once again, I think that they're going to throw a couple of different looks at Zach Wilson, and Zach Wilson's going to have to make some plays in this game. I think with Breece Hall, I have a little more confidence, but with the combination of Michael Carter and also James Robinson, I don't think it's as dynamic as it once was in that backfield, which is a big reason why they were winning games. Having to rely on Zach Wilson to make some big time throws is a big question mark for me because we haven't seen it enough this year. We haven't seen consistency from him. Therefore, it makes it a little more difficult to take the Jets on the road in a tough environment.
You hit the nail on the head there, Austin. Zach Wilson just has to play his best brand of football, and if he doesn't, it's going to be tough for the Jets to win. So I'm going to start the rumblings right now. Patriots fans, cover your ears. You're not going to like this. Tom Brady to the New York Jets this offseason. Let's make it happen, Joe Douglas. Let's go ahead now into our next matchup here. We're looking at a game between the Los Angeles Rams, the New Orleans Saints. And if you asked us at the start of the year who we would have picked in this one, I don't think either of us would have said, hey, we're both going unanimous on the Saints. But the Rams have been a disaster. Stafford's out. Cooper Kupp has an injury, and Sean McVay says, didn't look good, doesn't sound good. Well, that's not a good sign for this Rams offense, who basically runs their whole offense through Cooper Kupp. And if you want to know why going out and getting a running back like Christian McCaffrey at the price point the Niners did is important, well, maybe this would be a good reason why for Los Angeles here. They just don't have another offensive weapon to consistently go to now, and it's going to be tough for them to win this game. The Saints have been banged up all year, but maybe they finally get a little bit of luck back here in this one. Austin, what do you like about the Saints in this matchup from their point of view?
I don't love it. This is one of those games where I'm like, yo, let's go Saints. But at the end of the day, I like New Orleans defense. I think they're going to get after whether it's Stafford or Wolford. I don't know. I don't know what we're going to see from this. Who's going to be playing quarterback? Cooper Kupp being out likely in this one. You're very limited in terms of playmakers. Darrell Henderson is not a game-changing running back. Cam Akers isn't the same player he was. Allen Robinson is a shadow of himself. There's not a lot of great things working for the Rams, which kind of scares me a little bit. The Super Bowl champions of last year look vulnerable, which is odd because they absolutely ran through the playoffs last year, won the Super Bowl in rather convincing fashion, showed that they deserve to be the champs, and all of a sudden now this is a roster that looks a little old. It's banged up. There's fundamental flaws. The offseason was a good time for defenses to figure out the Rams offense. Their offensive line struggled. So not to kind of rain on the parade of the Rams, but I just think that the New Orleans Saints are going to have a better game plan going into this one. Alvin Kamara should have a pretty big day as well. Saints being at home definitely helps. Maybe if the Rams are at home and we knew the statuses, of like Matt Stafford, maybe that's a different story.
One note that I would be remiss not to mention here, this might be actually the most long-term impactful game of the week when you consider that neither of these teams have their first round pick this year. New Orleans pick is out to Philadelphia and currently slates to be a top 5 pick. And the Los Angeles Rams pick currently slates to go to Detroit, which right now would be slated 7th in the draft order. So whoever wins this game is making their draft pick less desirable for the team that owns it. And whoever loses might see themselves either get locked up into a top 5 pick or at least move that way in that direction, which is really important for the long-term outlook of both the Eagles, who are great this year, and the Lions, who I think are still building something and have some really nice pieces to work with. Going into our next matchup now, we look at a game here between those Detroit Lions I just mentioned and the New York Giants here. I like the Lions on the road. Dan Campbell just got his first road win as a coach. Took a little while to get there, but he got it. And I think maybe he can go 2 in a row here. I don't want to bet against the Giants. The Giants have played really great this year, but this is an example for me of fluky things happen in the NFL. People don't always expect things to go a certain way, and sometimes they just play out that way. The Lions are a better team than I think a lot of people give them credit for. Yes, they've lost a lot of games. Their record doesn't really indicate that, but they've been competitive in a ton of theirs. Austin, you and I got to see this team up close and personal, and we know that they can compete with some of the good teams. They almost beat the now 8-1 Vikings. So this team on the road, they've been competitive, and I think the Giants maybe overlooked them just a little bit, and that's why I have the Lions getting the win. Austin, what do you like about the Giants now and Saquon Barkley being the leading rusher in the NFL?
Yeah, Saquon Barkley is an absolute beast, and that's a big engine behind this. And with Detroit's front seven struggling mightily against the run, I think this is a good opportunity for Saquon Barkley to build off of what he's done so far this season. It's going to look good in the run game, I feel, for him. I think he's going to have a 100-yard day. And I think that opens up that play action. I don't love the Giants playmakers on the perimeter. However, I think they're going to be okay enough to go ahead and make this a good game. Once again, Detroit, this was a tougher game for me to pick than I think people realize, because Detroit has been so competitive. They've been really good offensively. And, not only do the stats, prove that, but you also use the eye test, and they look good. They look good across the board. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift. There's a lot of playmakers on this offense. However, no TJ Hawkinson definitely has a little bit of an impact as well. He's a bigger impact player than a lot of NFL fans, currently realize. So once again, I like the Giants here at home, but it was a tough game.
The lines are going to be pretty scary once Jameson Williams gets back. And I want to flash back to Saquon Barkley's draft class real quick, Austin. The Giants cut a lot of slack for drafting a running back top 2. Well, let's think about number 1, Baker Mayfield. We know how that played out. Sam Darnold went number 3 to the in-city rivals, New York Jets. Austin, did they make the right decision with Saquon at 2, do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because for quite a while there, people were still, skeptical even after we've seen NFL games. And it's just crazy to think that.
Yeah, it's funny. I just had to bring that up quick because everyone loves to slander the running back position. It's working out pretty well for them now. Let's get into our next pick here now between the Las Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos. And guys, I give up. I'm done. I'm not picking the Las Vegas Raiders again this season. I don't care if they're playing a college team. Heck, I don't care if they're playing my old high school team. I'm not picking the Raiders anymore. I can't pick them because I continue to lose ground in pick 'em every time I choose them. So awesome. I'm going with the Broncos at home. It's safe, not super desirable, but safe. The Raiders are terrible. And who knows, maybe I'll spur a little bit of a Raiders run here now that I'm picking against them. Why do you like Denver and Russell Wilson in this one?
Yeah, I think, their defense is the big factor in this one, because Pat Surtain is going to have a good game, and he's going to be, slotted to go up against Devontae Adams. And if you're able to take out Devontae Adams in the game, you're in a really good position against the Raiders. Josh Jacobs, who has had a nice season, I think is going to be bottled up a little bit by this Broncos defense. And overall, I think the Broncos will just have enough. They're at home. They have that going for them. They got that crowd noise. They got the altitude working for them against this Raiders team. Once again, a divisional matchup. It's always tough, gets tighter, but at the end of the day, I don't have a ton of confidence in Denver, but I think maybe Russell Wilson will be able to spark a little bit of something going up against this Raiders defense. And, they should get the job done hypothetically.
For those of you who do not know, we do record these videos pretty early in advance in the week. So it's possible some news might break on the current question I'm about to ask Austin, but I got 2 of them here for you, Austin. Who's the better coach right now, McDaniels or Saturday? And does McDaniels make it through this next weekend?
Yeah, that I think it's a little early to tell on that one, but McDaniels, who's had, some really good offenses in New England, I would go off of that. And, I think a lot of people are going to, give me some flack for it. But once again, this Raiders team has had like 43 combined snaps with Derek Carr, Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams all playing together. So we haven't seen this offense at full strength, but I think that, McDaniels when the offense is properly equipped, could get it going. However, that's a great question though.
Right. Waller, his injuries really hurt them this year. No doubt about that. Going into our next game now, we see a matchup here between the Dallas Cowboys and the Minnesota Vikings. Austin, you're going with the Cowboys. You're a little pessimistic here on these 8-1 Minnesota Vikings. I know you ride with them though. You really enjoy watching this team play, especially Justin Jefferson. Can we just talk real quick? Probably the best catch we've ever seen, right? We were talking before recording here, comparing that and Odell Beckham Jr.'s catch that was so infamous as well, when, Odell snagged it out of the air and no one was ready for it. It kind of broke the internet. I think Justin Jefferson's had a very similar impact, and it was on a 4th and 18 in coverage. It was insane. Body control, the amount of arm strength it even took for him to hold on to that ball, which is not something you typically think about a wide receiver, but the way he came down with it was so impressive. Austin, where do you rank that of catches all time? And then why do you have the Cowboys winning here?
Yeah, I think it's definitely up there. And I think maybe a little bit of an overreaction, potentially, if we say 1. But I also feel like just looking at it, holistically speaking, I mean, there's just so many different elements. You have the timing, you have the situation, you have the degree of difficulty, all those things combined for, one of the greatest catches we've ever seen. And the reason I'm picking the Cowboys in this game is I think that the Minnesota Vikings might be a little overwhelmed by the pass rush that the Cowboys are able to throw at them. The interior offensive line has been a main concern of mine for the Vikings. for this entire season. Ezra Cleveland has taken a massive step back. He has not looked good. Ed Ingram has looked awful this year. I still don't like Eric Bradbury. Definitely some key mistakes along that offensive line, mainly coming from that interior. If Christian Darrisaw isn't able to go in this one, I think that changes the entire complexion of this game. The Dallas Cowboys, I think, could get the job done on the road. We've seen, when the Minnesota Vikings had played them, with Cooper Rush as the starter, they weren't able to get the job done at home. But once again, this is a different Vikings team. I love this Vikings roster. However, I just think that Dallas can win this one in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I like Minnesota here. And I think, you raised a ton of great points. Ed Ingram seemingly doesn't know where to place his feet, stepped on Kirk Cousins' foot twice and caused a turnover and a sack down on the goal line, which is just insane. Not something you game plan for. The right guard knowing where to put his foot. But at the same time here for Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell's really put a lot of trust in Kirk Cousins. Austin, I know you completely agree with this as well. And the Vikings, I'm going to say this, it might regret it here a few weeks from now, but the Vikings kind of look clutch. They've had some really big come from behind wins. I think the game against Buffalo was really the one that's going to be the most notable, but game against Detroit earlier this year. Yes, they shouldn't have been down. Game against Washington. Sure, they shouldn't have been down. In the past, though, some of these Vikings teams would have rolled over in those situations. This one hasn't. Kirk Cousins has been right at the center of it. His stats this year don't look as good as I think he's played. I think he's played actually a really, really good brand of football, maybe some of the best of his career, honestly. Dalvin Cook starting to click at the right time. And Justin Jefferson might just be the best receiver in the NFL right now. So that trio for me, offensively, I really like. It also seems like Harrison Smith's kind of coming back to form. He's been better the last few weeks as well. And the linebacker play, Austin, I know how big of a fan you are of Jordan Hicks, Aaron Kendricks. Those two guys have made big plays this season, obviously really highlighted in the Buffalo game, that late touchdown that they scored. Minnesota's rolling. I like their talent more than Dallas, but like you said, Micah Parsons could be a game wrecker. I think it'll be close, but I'm betting on those clutch Vikings to get another one done here at home. Our next game now, we look at a matchup here between the San Francisco 49ers and Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, this game got flexed out of prime time. And we're both going with the Niners here. And I think Kyler Murray, we're not really sure if he's healthy. Zach Ertz is slated to miss a couple weeks now with a knee injury. It's hard to bet on Arizona, Austin. You and I kind of have a rule here to not pick them, honestly. It makes it really easy to pick the 49ers. So I want to ask you, what's your thoughts on the early returns of Christian McCaffrey there? What do you think of the offense, and why are they the right pick here?
Yeah, I definitely think despite them being on the road against a divisional opponent, I like their defensive front. I like this offense with Christian McCaffrey. He adds just a different element that you weren't getting with guys like Elijah Mitchell and Jeff Wilson. Those are players that were playing way above the level that they should have been. And I think that is a product of the system that Kyle Shanahan has to offer. But I think overall, this is a guy that's been able to figure it out, especially when he gets into postseason play. That's a big thing. He's got to be able to get there first. They're right in that playoff mix. They want to win this division. Seattle has looked tough. However, with Seattle just losing, it opens up the door once again for them to kind of sneak their way in there. With the Rams not looking good, that changes everything here in this division. 49ers are one of the best teams in the NFC, in my opinion, despite their record maybe not suggesting that. However, they're right there. They're super competitive. They got a lot of big time playmakers, and that's why I like this team. So pretty easy for me to select the Niners.
Right. I'm excited for this matchup. I think it's going to be a good one and a really decisive one for the NFC West and who ends up winning that division this season. Our next game now, we look at a matchup here on Sunday Night Primetime. Cincinnati Bengals head into Pittsburgh. And, Pittsburgh, a little rocky this year. We see some signs from Kenny Pickett, though. He is dealing with a really bad offensive line, which is what I think really benefits Cincinnati here. And they just have the offense to put up numbers, which I think is going to be hard for Pittsburgh to really keep up with, especially if they do have to become pass heavy, just again with that lack of offensive line play this season. Austin, what do you really like about the Bengals? I know you've been riding with them now for about a year and a half, and you really believe in the talent on this team.
Yeah, despite Jamar Chase's injury, this team I still believe in. You have the fundamental play of Joe Mixon. You have T. Higgins. You have Tyler Boyd. Hayden Hurst has even come on as a reliable pass catcher in this offense. This defense is underrated as well, in my opinion. A couple of different playmakers that we like on the defensive side of the football. And I think that this is a game that could be a nice statement win for the Bengals going on the road into Pittsburgh. And I just think that, Mike Tomlin has done a nice job carving out wins and making sure his teams are above 500 at the end of every season. That was almost a reason for me to go that way. However, this team isn't as talented as it's been in years past. Big Ben, he did a really good job winning football games in his career for the Gold and Black. But at the end of the day here, I'm going with the more talented team. I'm going with the team that I just think is better on paper and should be hypothetically better in this game. Give me those Bengals.
Right. Pittsburgh's overperforming right now. Mike Tomlin, like you said, big reason why. It's hard to not pick them some weeks, but at the same time, if you get the weeks wrong, you're kind of hurting your pick 'em record big time. So Cincinnati here on the money line, I like it quite a bit. Just feels safe to me, even though it is on the road divisional game, like you said. I still like it for them this week. Now Monday night primetime. Here we go. The game that got flexed there. AFC West, one of the best matchups we're going to see this whole entire week. These two teams always play each other close, competitive, and usually pretty fiercely. The Chiefs head into Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. There'll be more Chiefs fans there likely, but hey, it's basically neutral field here for the Chargers, so they at least have a shot in this one. Austin, we're both going with the Chiefs, though. We do like their roster a little bit more, and I think Patrick Mahomes, there's still a really good argument to be had that he's just flat out the best quarterback in football. I really like their sneaky addition of Kadarius Toney. I think that's a really nice weapon for them. We saw him get into the end zone this week for Kansas City as well. So I like their weapons. I like what they have. The defense has been pretty solid. They've been really, leaning into some of the younger corners on that team, and they've been playing pretty well. So even without Tyreek Hill this season, you and I weren't hitting the panic button, and I think that's paid off. What do you like about them in this matchup against the Chargers?
I look at the Kansas City Chiefs as a team that's one of those complete teams. I love what they have in the pass game, despite not having Tyreek Hill. They're definitely still relying on Travis Kelce heavily. The one concern I have is Juju's injury. We're not exactly sure what extent that's going to be. Took a hard hit against Jacksonville. Very well could be forcing him to miss some time. But like you had mentioned previously, with Kadarius Toney being the true gadget player, Mecole Hardman's played pretty well so far this season. MVS as well. There's some playmakers on this roster that are going to have to step up, but at the end of the day, we have a lot of confidence in these Chiefs. Maybe the Chargers will get healthy, and maybe this is going to make for one of the best games of the year as well. Just the history of this matchup, we've seen some great ones between these two teams, and I don't expect it to disappoint, especially with the Chargers being at home. I think that gives them a little bit of an edge. However, we still like Kansas City against the Chargers here. I think that they're going to have to force, Justin Herbert to make some mistakes and vice versa. Whoever wins the turnover battle, in my opinion, will win this football game.
Thank you to everyone who did watch the video this week. Really do appreciate you guys. Means a lot having your guys' support on the channel. Make sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel for more content like this one here. Go check out some of the AP Top 25 polls. Austin does a really great job, covering college football, and check out some of his NFL mock drafts on the channel as well. There's going to be a lot of more great content coming out on the channel, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Hit that notification bell, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.